carry the gun with the trigger depressed. It's very important to remember that this work contact element, once that's depressed and the trigger is pulled, it will fire. So if you keep the finger on the trigger and you're just going along bumping that work contact element down, then it's going to be firing every time.
And it's a natural situation when you're holding this gun. They make the handle so that it's more comfortable up by the trigger part. And guys carry them around with the trigger depressed all the time, especially when they're going from one project or one part of that project to another. As you're carrying it, this gun weighs a little over 8 pounds. So as you're swinging it around, any contact, if your finger is on the trigger, and this is a contact trip trigger, anything that nose bumps up against and depresses the plunger on there, it's going to fire. Whether it's a person, yourself, or a piece of material. So you always keep your hand off the trigger whenever you're transporting, whenever you're carrying it. And it's always a good idea if you're just transporting it to disconnect it from your air source. The other little bit of a danger is this carrying device that they have on here. Now, this is made to hook onto your pouches, onto your belt loop. Now, as long as you keep your hands off of it, it's relatively safe. It's not going to fire. However, you see guys that will hang these up on stuff, and as they're hanging them up, this bumps, you got your finger on the trigger, it's going to fire. So you have to be conscious of what you're doing at all times. This is like any other firearm. If you've ever been trained on firearms, it's the same thing. It is shooting a projectile, and that projectile can be dangerous. The big issue with the training is find out how to use it before you just grab it and start going with it. You have to have some training to use this gun. It's not a toy. It's like any other power tool. The more you use it, the better you get at it. But the more you use it, the more complacency that creeps in. You have to be aware of what you're doing with this at all times, just like a power saw or any other power device that you're using.
If you have a stud, so say like this would be your stud here, and then this is your top or your bottom plate, and you always make sure that you're going to fire that bottom nail first. What happens a lot of times is if you fire that top nail first, and if your hand's here, if this recoils and double shoots, sometimes the first nail goes where you want it to, but the second nail might skip through this wood or blow out this wood, and it can come. See how your hand is positioned here with your fingers all in a row here, and that nail, it's usually about a 3.25 inch nail, it can miss the plate, miss the stud, and come right through your fingers. That's how we see that really common nail gun injury where we have 3 fingers all nailed together. So that's how that happens when you're holding either a stud, nailing it into a top or bottom plate, or you're holding a block in between 2 studs. So you always remember to nail that bottom nail first, and then get your hand out of the way and nail that top nail.
Now, there are certain situations where using these guns, because they are large, heavy, and cumbersome, you have tight locations of your studs, and you may have to put backing in. When you do this, it's very difficult to get the proper angle, which is important when using one of these guns. If you notice, holding my hand back further, I can depress the gun, shoot, and secure the locking to it. If you don't have the proper angle and you come in, depress it, and shoot, now I've nailed the wall to the floor. So you have issues with tight spaces when using this gun because of the size of it. They have smaller devices for that, but most companies don't have it. There's a lot of situations that you're going to get into with this large device that are going to be extremely difficult to get good angle, good nail placement. And again, experience does a lot for you when you're using this gun. You learn to use it. You learn where your angles are, how to shoot the nail in so that it holds without nailing your wall to the floor.
And also, Steve, if your wall is not on the floor and you're trying to nail the block in place so the wall is already in a vertical position, then it's possible to fire the nails actually through the back of the block. And so people look at the block and they think the block is secured. The workers look at the block, think it's secured to the wall, but then the nails are hanging out the back of the block and really not securing anything at all.
And the other issue is getting too close. You get into tight corners, tight positions with this gun, your face is right up there. If you have a nail ricochet or come back at you, the chance of injury are much greater.
So a lot of times in these really tight, awkward positions, it's going to be much better just to grab the hammer and a
Imagine
nail.
that. Hand nailing.
Yes, hand nail.